Planet Earth, 10,000 years ago. For 2.5 million years, our prehistoric ancestors had been living in caves, passing the time by bashing stones together. Then suddenly, everything changed, and people began to build huge monuments all over the planet. But how and why? It's the biggest mystery in human history, but not for some people.
Thousands of years ago, when our forefathers were primitive Stone Age people, some extraterrestrials visited our Earth.
Extraterrestrial presence not only departed the wisdom to build the monuments, but possibly the technology to make it happen.
Could aliens have started civilization and built some of the most famous monuments on Earth? All over the Earth, there are giant stone monuments. Almost everyone knows they were created thousands of years ago by ancient man. But could almost everyone be wrong? According to the official history books, buildings like the pyramids and Stonehenge are triumphs of human engineering, which mark the beginning of our human civilization.
People just like us have been around for at least 100,000 years. And then suddenly, a few thousand years ago, we just stepped out of our caves and started building all these giant monuments. One of the mysteries here is not only how did ancient man build all these giant megalithic monuments, but why?
Over the years, scientists have struggled to explain it. One group of people say that most of these monuments were built or designed in the distant past by aliens who visited our planet with their super advanced technology. One believer is Jason Martell. He lives in California and runs a dating agency. But in his spare time, he's been grappling with the biggest archaeological mystery of our time. And he says he solved it.
Man could have had the ability to physically stack those large blocks in Egypt and build that, 100,000 men. But the knowledge to do it had to come from somewhere else. There had to be some type of intervention, and that's why I look towards the ancient astronaut theory. Ancient astronauts from somewhere else came here and influenced our society.
Jason and other believers say this idea would explain some baffling questions about ancient monuments. Take Stonehenge. How did Bronze Age Britons drag these 5-ton stones over 170 miles? And then there's the biggest controversy of all, the pyramids of Giza. The biggest one is made from 2.5 million blocks of stone. It was built in just 20 years and is lined up exactly with the North Pole, less than 1/10 of a degree out. According to the experts, the answer is simple. The ancient Egyptians were just terribly clever, worked very fast and very hard. And they created a whole tourist industry in only a few decades. But that doesn't convince the likes of Jason Martell.
Many of the ancient sites around the world display a type of brilliance that we don't attribute to ancient man. If ancient man is living in clay huts and using stone tools, they're not going to have the advanced mathematics and geometry to lay out some of the sites that we have today. How did ancient man build things like Stonehenge? How did they get the Giza pyramids to line almost 1/10 off a degree to actual north?
In 1968, Erich Von Daniken achieved international notoriety when he published a controversial theory which said that alien astronauts had visited Earth in our ancient past.
Thousands of years ago, when our forefathers were still Stone Age people, some extraterrestrials arrived.
People are attracted to Erich's theories, I think, because there are genuinely unexplained mysteries of the past. And we really don't have all of the answers to why mankind, supposedly a primitive mankind, would go through the tremendous effort to build many of these giant monuments.
Erich Von Daniken has definitely been one of the pivotal people that I've looked to grab onto the coattails of his information and really start to look at this information in a new light.
This 2,000-year-old pottery jar, for example. It was discovered in Baghdad in 1938. Inside it were copper and iron rods, similar to a modern battery. Back in California, Jason Martell has built his very own replica.
What we're looking at basically is just a simple clay pot formed with the clay found naturally in that region, and then using a simple copper lining and a iron metal rod down the center. This was back in their days used either a rubber or an asphalt stopper.
Jason fills the pot with an acid solution, vinegar.
Getting some little numbers here. See that spike? It's going off the chart here now. Look, there we go. See that?
Generating 4 volts right there.
What we attribute to ancient man, they deserve a lot more credit than we're giving them. Because obviously we can test the devices with our understandings of technology and get a reading. Here we are, 4 volts right there from the battery. So obviously they were able to make this happen. What were they using it for? Very possibly electricity.
Back at Erich's theme park, the Baghdad Battery is given pride of place, alongside an object based on an Egyptian drawing which he claims was an electric light bulb. Erich is convinced the ancient Egyptians used electricity to light up the dark passages in their pyramids. A place called Planet X. Jason Martell is convinced aliens are from there. He says that the ancient Sumerians from Iraq believed in a 10th planet in our solar system, which modern science hasn't yet discovered. Sumerians, he says, believed that's where their gods, the Anunnaki, hung out.
Again, the Anunnaki are the beings supposedly that come from Planet X, another planet within our solar system that modern science is currently trying to look for. That planet does exist. It's possible we have ancestors living on that planet.
My job there was to examine pictures as they were coming in of the surface of Mars in regions that we thought would be safe for the spacecraft to land. There was a small group of people who felt that this was an example of an alien construction, that there was life on Mars, or there had been life on Mars.
NASA promptly issued a denial, which for believers was obviously proof of a monumental cover-up.
You know, the interesting thing about NASA's track record, NASA, National Aeronautic Space Association, could also stand for Never a Straight Answer. In its inception in 1959 or so, NASA consulted a big think tank called the Brookings Institute, which advised NASA, if you ever find extraterrestrials, these things need to be handled cautiously. For one, society in general and religious institutions aren't quite ready to accept an extraterrestrial presence.
Pyramids on Mars were spooky enough, but then things got really out of hand when NASA released another batch of photographs from the plain of Sidonia. And near the pyramid shapes was something else. A rocky outcrop that some people felt had an eerie resemblance to something familiar, something that ancient astronaut believers have long connected with aliens. Yep, that other famous tourist site in Egypt.
Very interestingly enough, NASA first took an image of the face on Mars and they labeled it head. And this photograph was quickly dismissed by NASA as a trick of light and shadow. It's not really a face on Mars, it's just a lighting angle difference. Wrong answer. Here we have a face in pyramids on Mars, a sphinx in pyramids in Egypt. There has to be a connection, a Mars-Earth connection.